The mathematics, the arithmetic that he's just given, several people have given such figures. And some had retorted that, well, it's just as well that we don't have the full complement of voters, otherwise the timing would never be enough. But does that say that there's something wrong, basically, with the process as it stands now, considering the fact that we are using manual systems? Is there?
Yeah, of course there is. I mean, when you also give INEC to people who do not have the experience or project management or the experience or the capacity to lead through processes, these are system builders, and they're available, just like the gentleman in Abuja obviously has an understanding of systems on how you move from one point to the other. And in building up to this particular election, I already saw valuable errors in many of its processes. Take, for example, as much as people talk about voters' education didn't really happen. What happened is called voter information. There's a difference between just an information you dole out and an education you give. Education requires that you break it down to its minimum understanding, and you probably break it down to various languages of the major languages that you know that is empirical in Nigeria. But when you look at build up to this particular election, the agency NOA, National Orientation, the Ministry of Information did not do their job. Because even with INEC, like you said, INEC, the stakeholders that INEC needed to work with, because we will not exonerate INEC on this one. Under the good to great model, the leaders take the fall for anything that happens. When you succeed, you look outside the window and celebrate your team. When you fail, you look at the mirror and take responsibility. In other words, INEC went to present their budget. INEC was telling us what they require, whether it's at security level, organization level, ad hoc staff, and all the 9 years, including the youth corpers that were treated very badly. So INEC needed to have a full-scale system of its proposal on the 84 million. Of course, you fell short of that, but you should have the full system, the full strategy, the full implementation. In other words, you should even have, like in the, we teach something called God's Quality Management System, because it's not just about the ISO of management system. There are intricate things within the world that God has put in place, where we talk about emergency preparedness. I mean that part of knowing that maybe there will be a difference between X and Y, and what is exactly cancellation of votes. Does the citizen know what it means for cancellation of votes? Does the politician whose agents are representing them know what is cancellation of vote? Now, votes are being voided, elections are inconclusive. Do you know the opportunity cost, the capital loss for Nigeria to have a rerun because of either self-interest or whatever is happening right now? So I agree with him that those nitty-gritties are critical, but we must always go back. When you talk about even the issue of there is violence outside, there's a proverb that says, a lazy man says there's a lion outside. Whether you like it or not, that is the principle. In other words, if majority of what comes out, the likelihood of somebody coming to waylay 10,000 people versus taking off 100, it's not the same. So the citizenship, the spirit of patriotism, of nationalism is still lacking. It was the responsibility of NOA, the responsibility of the Minister of Information. You see, the problem is that when you become a minister of information under a particular political party, like Lin Kuan Yew said, one of the weaknesses of African leaders is an inability to go beyond party lines and tribal lines. In as much as you're Minister of Information, you're not Minister of Information for APC. You are Minister for Information for Nigeria, including your enemies. So invariably, the office in which you carry, like these new ministers, you are not carrying the office just for APC. You are carrying the office for Nigeria. And therefore, Nigeria is in my heart to decide that this information that needs to get to the public as training, as education, I must have the full force at my disposal to make sure that whether it's in Idoma language, Edo, the minor ones, Ibibio, there is a communication to the people. Let us not think our people are that stupid. We know that they are poor, but they are not stupid. Being poor does not make a man really stupid. And so the political class are running this election like the wild, wild west. In other words, I decide how I want the outcome. No, INEC must know, in one of the management systems is that you must be customer focused. Who is the customer for INEC? Who is INEC's customer? Nigerians.
The voters.
Not the political class. It is the voters that have the franchise, the voters that have the card, the voters that went out of their way, some going 3 times, 4 times because they needed a card.
Unfortunately, it's not the voters that count or that, determine, who is going to do what. So I don't know how, when you look at the disruption, this is something you think about, even though we need to go to a quick break. When you look at the areas where disruption has happened, then you hear, oh, what happened in that area was not enough to swing the votes either way. But it does affect, doesn't it, somehow?
Of course it does affect. Even in America, people win vote by little margins. A state can turn red or blue by a small margin. And that's why in that guideline of INEC, obviously there's a legal loophole, legal framework loophole. There's something cynical in that guideline that was not watched. Because you are now putting a burden now on that same voter to come back in that same area to decide a man that he wants, who he may never relate with. He decided to come out because, make we just get the governor where we want. At least this governor did try. But now you have destroyed his morality. Like I said, in one of the global competitive index under our infrastructure, is our lack of trust in politicians is at 130 over 137. In other words, we just beat 7 nations in the fact that our people don't trust the politicians. So now you have put the burden back on the people, because remember, the politicians are not going to vote for themselves. In other words, you're putting pressure back on the people to come out again in these so-called areas, and guess what? Everybody's tired.
Let me put you on pause, Mrs. Benite. We'll take that break now, and when we come back, we'll allow you to continue.
Yes, sir.
Welcome back. As we did promise, it's a short break. And we just have enough time for Mrs. Benite to have a couple of minutes to finish what she was saying. And then we'll go to Abuja and take the last word from Dayo Oriade.
For me, Leke Ada recently had a paper that he presented and said something about poor people cannot make decisions. And obviously, the poverty level all over the nation, it's obvious. But I also say that people who do not love their country cannot make decisions. The love for country, the nationalism and patriotism is a gift God gives to every people. I say that God gives you a country, but nation building is the responsibility of the individuals within that country. You have the nation you design, you have the nation you desire, you have the nation you deserve. The reality is that if Nigerians, the populace of Nigeria, have passion that this country, beyond their regions, beyond their tribe, beyond their religion, and they have the passion that this nation must rise up out of this dust, we will participate. There is a sense, because it's like the chicken and the egg. We need to go back into our education system, the issue of civic, within, and I repeat, within the church, within the mosque, within the schools. It has to become a conversation that Nigeria is our responsibility. I always say when I lecture, like this weekend I'm having a lecture, and one of the topic is the role of elites in national transformation. And I say angels and spirits do not build nations. They did not build Europe. Europe did not descend from the skies. It was men and women who were patriotic, passionate, that loved their country and participated. I do not care the conditionality of Nigeria, the inconceivable environment. It takes men of great mind, women of audacity, to confront the enemy at this gate. For everyone who is in the state, just like an example of Akwa Ibom, I just got some report that many elites went home to Akwa Ibom and said this election is our election. Governorship election is so critical. It has an overall impact on the federal issues and policies that will make constitutional changes. The states have a responsibility. And for us to begin to talk about this special list that has hooked the state, I mean, all of them are talking about becoming independent from federal allocations. It takes us to also address some issues of special list. There are some things within the federation and within our union that must be addressed. but it cannot be addressed from my bedroom. I have to trust a Nyota to go on my behalf to speak for me. It is that serious. It is not about, oh, my vote will not count. I don't trust this guy. They have decided in the back room. If you tell them they cannot do that, it will not happen.
Yes.
It will not happen. Whether we like it or not, we have seen in Akwa Ibom that shift from individual politics to a people's politics. It was not about anybody anymore. It was about the people of Akwa Ibom deciding their destiny. And that is not happening. And as long as elite class during elections go and stay in Canada, some of them trooped to England because they have visas and tickets, it is unfair. Rwanda recently just launched a satellite to connect the villages to education. Rwanda has a drone, medical drone, that delivers drugs to villages and places that, for example, the Niger Delta, where we cannot go into the interior. People are thinking Nigeria needs to rise up and stop disgracing ourselves, because we are behaving as if we didn't go to school by counting ballots when that bill was supposed to be signed. And everybody has been affected by that bill. Those in the House of Assembly, the senators who did not take this matter seriously, some of them are biting their nails now and say, I wish we had pushed harder. And for INEC, if INEC had issues, after all, they were shouting for the budget. Beyond budget, why didn't you shout for the other things you needed? Because at the end of the day, I don't care how many people INEC needed to work to. They are the umpire. Whatever is happening is on INEC. It's on Professor himself, Mahmoud, who is the leader of the entire state. Look at what happened to a new man that I met. I've been asking questions about Igini. And they told me that Igini is from school days of Uniben. Those who went to Uniben say he was the president of Student Union or something. The guy is audacious. He doesn't take anything. He said, I'm not going to Akwa Ibom to count money. I'm going there to count votes. We need more people. In Singapore now, they do what they call psychoanalysis, where they need to know whether under pressure what you're capable of doing. Obviously, we have seen that there are psychological issues that we need to address as a people. If INEC has to be truly independent, Nigerians must decide. But this hooliganism and this wild, wild west that is going around cannot continue.
Let me put, is at that point that you have, we need to take,
thank you.
We need to take a break. Yes, we need to take a break at this point. And that is to, while we're having the discussions here, there are other discussions going on elsewhere, mainly online. And there's a program for that within the verdict, and that's where we're going now. That's the poll stream. We'll be back after that, so please stay with us.